Okay, in this video, I'm going to give you a really quick, fast-paced idea of how to create an activity. If you'd like more details, look for the longer video that's about creating new activities. So, straight to the point, create an activity, add a title of some sort. When you add a new activity, press continue. If you would like, you can provide additional details about your activity and even some tags or keywords if you want, and as many of those as you'd like. But the really important thing is to set up the 3 phases of the activity. So once you've done your original stuff, go right to the create phase. Here, the critical things for you to do are add some instructions to your students just by typing in the box here. And so that here you just describe to them the activity you want them to perform. What is their task? You can also attach resources if you like, maybe a rubric, maybe you want them to watch a video or something prior to, and respond to that. Anything you want to attach, you can do so here. You also have a few options. Do you want them to have a text box to provide their composition in, or are they doing attachments? So you can turn either of these on or off if you want to just make the interface a little simpler. And if you would like to add a word limit, you can do that. That's really all there is to the create phase though. It's just basically describing your activity to the students and giving them any attachments they would need. So let's move on to the assess phase. So now what we're thinking about is, okay, students have all submitted a composition, and in this phase they are going to see the compositions submitted by a subset of their peers. So the first question is, how many of their peers' work do you want them to see? So you can choose anything, along here. In this case, they will be asked to review the work of 4 of their peers. And now what you can do is basically define what you want them to do with that work. So they're going to see the work on the left side of the screen. On the right side of the screen, they are going to basically answer some assessment questions, and here's where you can add those assessment questions. So you have different things. For example, you could use a point scale and just say, what rating would you give this piece, this composition, let's say, out of, so if we wanted it out of 10, and we can set it to be out of 10, we can have a minimum value. If we only want 1, we can say whether we want them to be able to put a 7.5. If you do, then you turn off this whole numbers only, etc. So that's one of the tools that's available, but in fact, as you see, there's a whole suite of tools, including a matrix tool if you want to basically have them respond to a matrix in a way that's consistent with a rubric you use, for example. That can be really good. The one thing I will highly suggest is that you do include a comment, because the real core of things is constructive feedback. So you want them in some way to analyze the work and then give the author of that work some feedback about how they think the work can be improved. Okay, so you can add something of that sort, and now students will see a box. And just to make this a little clearer and to show you this feature, at any point along the way, you can preview the work, so you get a sense. Here's the instructions they're going to get, and now we've got them set to see 4 things, and here's what they'll be asked to do. So they'll see the peer work here, and they will be asked to do the assessment here. They can also, by the way, add inline comments. So if you want to say, lower level things like sentence structure, grammar, citation, people can attach that directly to the work if they want. So if you want that ability, then there will be an option here to have the inline comments on or off. After they assess their 4 peers, do you want them to assess their own work? And if you do want them to assess, so if you don't, you turn it off. If you do, you turn it on. And then you can take a look. By default, they're asked the same questions of their own work that they're asked about their peers. But if you want to, in fact, make the self-assessment unique, different from the peer assessment, then you can check that off, and you can feel free to edit these and delete whatever you want, add new ones, etc. And by the way, at any time you can move these around if you want to change the order of the feedback. Okay. The instructions are auto-generated for you based on the features you select, But if you want, you can also go ahead and edit the instructions. That's it for the assess phase. Okay, so once you have that set up, you move on to the reflect phase. Reflect phase is in fact very straightforward. You basically, by default, when students log in, they will see the comments that their peers applied to their work, so they will see all that constructive feedback. And typically it will be the same number of feedback compositions as they provided. So if they assessed 4 of their peers, typically they will see 4 pieces of feedback themselves. So you can, if you wish, you can have it as simple as that. You can turn off these other 2 features, and now all they're going to do is see the feedback. But we highly encourage that you ask them to assess the feedback, so in some way to analyze each piece of feedback. And again, this is the same toolbox, so you can specify exactly how you want them to analyze that feedback using any of these same tools. Assessing the feedback and knowing their feedback is going to be assessed. Well, first of all, asking them to assess feedback encourages them to really constructively and critically analyze the feedback. So that's good for the person doing the rating. And also, when students know their feedback is going to be assessed, they tend to put a little more time and effort into the feedback. So we strongly encourage that you at least ask them to assess. So they see it and they assess it. What you can also do, if you wish, is ask them to actually revise their work in light of the feedback. So if you flip this switch, then once they have seen and assessed the feedback, they will be given the opportunity to now revise their work for a final submission. So to actually use that feedback to make their work better. Those are the core things. If you've covered all those, you've covered the critical stuff. You do have an additional option. I'll hit this additional assessments here, and that's the final point. You can also have students, after they've done the things we've just defined in each phase, you can ask them to do something else, and you can specify these by phases. So just to make this a little bit clearer, right after the create phase, we might say, how much time did you spend researching? Oh, let's be more. Let's do a little more. How engaging did you find this activity? Yeah, sure. Okay, let me just go back to that. And so you could put this on some value. Again, 1 to 10 if you'd like a 1 to 10. This would be now more for you. Right after students compose something or do something, you could say, well, did you enjoy that? Did you find it engaging? So when you have a question like this, you can decide, do I want to ask that after they finish the create, after the assess, after the reflect, and you can do any combination. So these are questions that you can use for your own sake to gain a little bit of more knowledge, more sort of insight into what students are thinking about the work you're asking them to do. You can also use it to collect research data if you want to do a more formal analysis of things. So that's available to you, but this is completely optional. You don't have to do it. That's really all there is to setting up an activity. All right, good luck. Have a great time. Bye-bye.